In this week's episode, I'm giving you 10 simple tips on hot tent camping for beginners, so stay tuned. So tip number 1, the stove. Always make sure you get a high quality stove. Don't get any cheap tack that you find on Temu, AliExpress, Shein, any of these places, because you get what you pay for. Start with brands like Pomoly, Winterwell, etc. Don't go for your cheap tack, because I've heard horror stories of the stove warping so badly that the door pings open slightly in the middle of the night. Then all that happens is you get carbon monoxide filling up your tent. It's not good. So start with a good quality stove. So tip number 2, the flue pipe. You'll get 2 types of flue pipe. You'll get the sectional one, which you just pop on top of each other and straight out, straight forward, or you can get the roll up one like mine. If you've got the roll up one like mine that's come with your stove, don't stress. Just refer back to one of my videos in the description box below. I'll teach you guys in that video how to roll these with no dents and no crinkles, because the last thing you want is this to have a little weak point in it where there's a dent or a crinkle from you rushing and rolling it, and then it can fold if the wind comes, which it can come, especially during night. So tip number 3, the spark arrestor. It can come in the form of a sectional piece if you've got the sectional pipe, or like mine, it slots on top of the rolling pipe. They're there to prevent sparks coming out from whatever timber you're burning, or from rattling things around as you put them in the stove and burning your tent. It can't always be prevented, but it helps. So I do prefer to have these. Some stoves don't come with them. I personally would avoid them or get one for it. But most stoves, if you check what's included, contents that's included, they will come with one. Always keep your eye on the holes in them. Just keep checking as you're walking around camp or doing your thing. Just keep checking the holes, because they can become clogged over time or dependent on wood that you use. So always make sure, because if not, it can prevent the draft from coming up the flue and coming out the top, and it will backdraft towards you with the smoke. So they're there to serve the purpose of preventing the sparks. So tip number 4, rocks. When you have your stove that's quite low to the ground, like you can see mine is here, and I also have a strap that goes across from the tent, I tend to put rocks underneath the stove. This prevents it from scorching the ground, setting anything on fire, because last thing you want is smoke in here, gassing you out as it's setting little bits on fire like pine needles, because I'm in a pine forest here. And it prevents stuff like this tent strap that goes underneath from burning. Also, they do serve a purpose as well, because they will hold and retain the heat for longer rather than it just dissipating from underneath. So they'll get warm and they'll stay warm as well. So it can help to keep the tent efficiently heated during the night. So tip number 5, wood selection. Try to stick with your hardwoods like your birch, cherry, ash or oak. They're the ones that I can use and I've got access to it in this woodland that I'm in now. Pine I use purely to get the stove going, because it burns fast and it burns hot, but it also can clog up your pipe or your spark arrestor, and it creates a lot more sparks, which will burn your tent. So if you're using pine, bear that in mind. Okay, if that's all you can use, that's all you can use, but try and damp your stove down to prevent the sparks flying out. So wood selection, hardwoods. So tip number 6, the stove jack. Now this tent came with this stove jack and it's already sewn on. You can get them where it velcros on, or there's an opening for one. Try and get one that is this material, the silver shiny material. I have another tent that's come with like a welder's cotton that's heat resistant also, but it does tend to absorb all the water and the moisture and drips through. This one, because I've cut it as an X rather than circle, it helps stop water ingress through down past the pipe, and it veers away from it. If it's a circle, it will go through and end up popping and making a mess on top of your stove while you're in there during the night. So number 6, get a decent stove jack. Tip number 7, the tent. Try and pick a tent that has clearance for the stove. So mine, because it's quite a low tent, has got some guy out points to pull the fabric away from the stove, so if there's any wind or the material decides to sag, I can tension it up, but it does create more clearance around the stove so it doesn't push in and melt against the stove during the night or heavy winds. Tip number 8, guying out the flue pipe. Now, a lot of these, especially these ones that are not sectional, that you roll yourself, tend to come with the guy outs with them. Now, if you want to be sure and you want to guy your flue pipe out, if it is a certain height above your tent, like mine is here, you can guy it out at 3 points of contact to create a triangular effect. Don't put too much tension on them because you don't want to pull it and move everything so that it's pushing on the tent. So you just do it so that it's just got enough tension on just about thereabout to stop it from moving if the wind does kick. I haven't done it with mine this time because I know it's going to be a relatively calm night tonight, and I know this tent and I know this stovepipe. So if you guys are a beginner and you want to make sure that you're safe, guy it out. Tip number 9, airflow. Now, when you're getting your stove going, you will be inclined to open all the damper and the front vents. That's totally fine. Get it going, get it raging, load it up. Once it gets to a reasonable temperature and a nice steady-ish burn, just damp it down a little bit at the front and the back. Tailor it. You can sort of hear the stove when it starts chugging or it needs less air because it's creating too much of a draft. So you just damp it down, because this also helps hold the heat inside the stove. Now, when it's during the night, I tend to use my stove until I'm going to sleep. I let it burn down a little bit first so that it's really, really low, and then I'll open all the vents fully, so that when I start to fall asleep, because nobody wants to go to sleep when it's freezing, so you'll probably still want the heat from the stove, but as long as it's just about dying down and you can maybe see embers, just open it fully. That way you know that when you go to sleep that it's safe and all the oxygen is forcing the smoke and anything that's burning out of the top. If you leave it damped relatively low because you've had a nice steady burn, it could cause leakage of smoke through the stove. So just be safe, guys. Try not to burn it during the night and open all of the vents when it's quite low down and you're ready to go to sleep. And finally, tip number 10, ventilation. Make sure that your tent is well ventilated. Mine has ventilation on the back and behind the stove. It doesn't need to be excessive ventilation, but enough that can create flow through the tent. It also helps push the warm air around. It prevents the smoke and the carbon monoxide. If you really want, bring a carbon monoxide detector. If that'll make you feel better, put it somewhere near you, and then you know that you're safe. And just a quick one, make sure you use gloves when you're handling these stoves, because they get hot. And enjoy yourself while you go out in the woods, guys. Till next time, peace.